experienced personally those same reactions. For example, when I was being interviewed by a reporter from the New York Times, and we were sitting in an agricultural area of Georgia after dark, after she'd done all her filming, and in the area where the hay was fertilized with land-applied sewage sludge, and a lot of that hay was baled up on bales, and we sat down on a couple of bales that were beside the highway, sort of wrapping things up and talking about the day. And no longer than we sat on those bales for a couple of minutes, I started getting migraine headaches. I was getting shortness of breath. I was getting visual problems. And I realized all of a sudden, she did too, that we were experiencing the same thing that the people living around the farms were experiencing and tying to land application sewage sludge. But I was also tying it to a couple of buildings that I investigated, one of them being a federal building that I investigated at the request of the federal government, where residents were complaining of what anyone would describe as sick building syndrome. And as I went in and went into the basement areas and whatever, and looking through the venting system, and I could see black molds growing on them, and it struck a cue with me because of an interesting experiment that I did with sewage sludge. I was trying to isolate different bacteria and algae and fungi that I could experiment with individually to look at their metabolic pathways and whatever. And I decided one day to just separate the fungi from the bacteria and see which one was playing the biggest role in biodegradation. It was an easy thing to do because, based on my medical training, I was familiar with amphotericin B and other polyene antibiotics that are used for fungal infections. And they're very effective. I mean, within seconds, they shut down fungal metabolism. So what I did with my sludge samples was to add amphotericin B, and I repeated the experiments with nystatin, a different polyene antibiotic, and got the same results. What it showed was that the overwhelming majority of the biological activity going on in sewage sludge applied to fields was fungal. It was molds. And so that connection, couldn't help it. This is the same thing I was experiencing personally when the New York Times reporter and I were sitting on these hay bales that were contaminated with sludge, visible amount, and I was visiting these federal buildings and commercial buildings, looking at the health records of the employees working there. It's the same script.
I have to ask, are you familiar, have you ever heard of the history of Stachybotrys, the discovery of the toxic black mold?
Yeah, I am, and I started